The first time she yelled at me, it was raining so hard the sky looked like it was falling apart. I was standing by my living room window, like I always did, watching the world blur into streaks of gray. That's when the front door across the narrow courtyard flew open and she stormed out, her auburn hair whipping in the wind, her voice sharp enough to cut through the storm. She accused me of staring at her every single day, of being creepy, of having nothing better to do with my life. And as humiliating as it was to hear those words echo across our small apartment complex in Portland, Oregon, the worst part was that she was absolutely right. Before we go any further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of unexpected change, take a second to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share it with someone who needs a reminder that people aren't always what they seem, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this matter because they remind us that growth often begins with uncomfortable truths. My name is Caleb Morrison, and at 36 years old, I had perfected the art of watching life instead of living it. After my divorce 2 years earlier, I moved into a modest second-floor apartment overlooking a shared courtyard with chipped paint benches and a struggling maple tree. I worked remotely as a data analyst, barely leaving my place except to buy groceries or pick up prescriptions. My routines were safe, predictable, and painfully small, and yes, I stared out the window far too often. Across from me lived Vanessa, a nurse at St. Vincent Medical Center. I didn't know her name at first, but I learned her patterns. She left before sunrise most days, hair tied back, coffee tumbler in hand. She returned exhausted, shoulders slumped, sometimes still in scrubs. On weekends, she watered the small row of plants on her balcony, her movements careful, almost tender. I told myself I was just observing the world, that I was appreciating the small details of life. But deep down, I knew I was hiding from my own. When Vanessa confronted me in the rain, her frustration wasn't theatrical. It was raw. She said she felt watched, uncomfortable in her own home. She said every time she stepped onto her balcony, she could feel my eyes on her. Her words landed like stones in my chest. Neighbors peeked through their blinds. The courtyard felt smaller than ever. I wanted to argue, to explain that I wasn't dangerous, that I meant no harm. But intent doesn't erase impact. So I stood there, soaked and silent, feeling exposed in a way I hadn't since my marriage collapsed. That night, I closed my curtains for the first time since moving in. The silence inside my apartment felt heavier than usual. Without the distraction of watching other lives unfold, I was forced to sit with my own. I thought about how my ex-wife, Rachel, used to complain that I drifted away emotionally long before we signed the divorce papers. She used to say I observed problems instead of confronting them, that I studied feelings like spreadsheets instead of experiencing them. Vanessa's accusation echoed the same truth. I wasn't just staring at her, I was staring at life because I was too afraid to participate in it. Days passed, and I avoided the windows. I rearranged my furniture so my desk faced the opposite wall, but something about that confrontation refused to fade. I saw Vanessa differently now. Not as a silent figure in my daily routine, but as someone who had drawn a boundary. Someone who demanded to feel safe. The more I thought about it, the more I respected her for it. One Saturday afternoon, I forced myself outside. The air smelled like damp earth and pine. Vanessa was in the courtyard, kneeling beside the struggling maple tree, trying to prop it up with a wooden stake. For a moment, I considered retreating back inside. Old habits whispered that it was safer to observe from a distance. But then I remembered the rain, her anger, and the uncomfortable truth she handed me. I walked toward her, heart pounding harder than it had in months. I apologized. Not defensively, not with excuses, but sincerely. I told her she was right, that I had been staring too much, that I'd let isolation turn me into someone who watched instead of lived. I didn't expect forgiveness. I just wanted her to know I understood. Vanessa looked at me carefully, as if weighing whether I was genuine. Then her expression softened just slightly. She admitted she might have overreacted in public, that her job had been overwhelming lately. She'd lost 2 patients in 1 week. She felt on edge. The idea of being watched at home, even innocently, had pushed her over it. For the first time, I saw the exhaustion behind her sharpness. Over the next few weeks, something subtle shifted. We weren't friends overnight. There were no dramatic gestures. but we began exchanging small waves in the mornings. Sometimes we'd cross paths at the mailboxes and share brief conversations about the unpredictable Oregon weather or the rising cost of rent. I learned she'd moved to Portland from Boise to escape a relationship that left her doubting her own strength. She learned I'd buried myself in work after my divorce, afraid of failing at anything personal again. The courtyard didn't feel like a stage anymore. It felt like shared space. One evening, the power went out across the entire block after a transformer blew. The apartment complex sank into darkness. I lit a few candles and stepped outside for air. Vanessa was already there, sitting on one of the chipped benches, her phone flashlight casting a small circle of light. Without thinking, I joined her. We sat in near silence, listening to distant sirens and the hum of a city temporarily stilled. She confessed that being a nurse sometimes made her feel helpless, despite dedicating her life to helping others. I admitted that analyzing data all day made me feel detached from anything that truly mattered. Under that dark sky, stripped of distractions, we weren't neighbor and annoyance. We were two flawed people navigating loneliness. That night, I realized something important. My staring hadn't just been about curiosity, it had been about longing. I wanted connection but didn't know how to ask for it, so I started changing small things. I joined a local hiking group that met on weekends in Forest Park. I began volunteering once a month at a community food pantry downtown. The first time I handed someone a box of groceries and saw relief in their eyes, I felt more present than I had in years. I wasn't observing life through glass. I was inside it. Vanessa noticed. One afternoon, she asked about the mud on my boots. I told her about the hike, about how hard the incline had been, about how strangers had turned into acquaintances by the end of the trail. She smiled in a way that reached her eyes. She said she was proud of me for stepping outside my comfort zone. Proud. No one had said that to me in a long time. Our conversations grew longer. We started sharing coffee on Sunday mornings in the courtyard, not as an obligation, not out of pity, but because it felt natural. The maple tree, now steadier with its support stake, began sprouting brighter leaves. It became an unspoken symbol of both of us trying to stand a little taller. Months later, during another rainstorm, I found myself at the same window where this story began. But this time, the curtains were only partially open, and I wasn't staring. I was watching the rain while waiting for Vanessa to return from a long shift so we could cook dinner together in my apartment. The difference wasn't the view, it was the intention. I wasn't hiding anymore. Vanessa eventually admitted that my staring had scared her because she had felt invisible in her previous relationship. Being watched without being known had triggered old wounds, but by confronting me, she had also confronted her own fear. In a strange way, we had both forced each other to grow. If this story is touching your heart right now, take a moment to engage with this video. Like it, share your thoughts in the comments, and let others know that sometimes the people who irritate us most are mirrors reflecting something we need to face. And before we reach the end, I have a special request. Comment the word awaken if you believe that uncomfortable truths can lead to beautiful transformations. The truth is, being called out hurt. It bruised my pride and exposed my loneliness. But it also jolted me awake. Vanessa was right. I had been staring too much. I had been letting fear shrink my world to the size of a window frame. Her frustration became the catalyst for my change. Today, the courtyard feels different. Not because it's prettier or quieter, but because I am different. I still look out the window sometimes. I still notice the way light hits the maple leaves or how rain pools along the cracked pavement. But I don't hide behind the glass anymore. I step outside. I speak. I listen, and every now and then when Vanessa catches me glancing her way, she doesn't see a stranger staring. She sees someone who chose to grow. Sometimes the people who challenge us the hardest are the ones who save us from ourselves.